Hi guys, welcome. Hi guys, welcome. Glad to see you here with me today. We are going to go over how to finish your skull with polishing after you have done all the grinding in your box. That's why the box is no longer here. I can see comments, so if you have questions during the show, please feel free to ask questions. If you're watching this on the playback, you may want to watch it at double speed. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. And I'm going to show you, I did work probably about another hour, maybe 2 hours, fiddling around with the shape of my skull. And I think I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. The teeth were probably the funnest part. I really enjoyed doing the fine carving. And then from here, what we're going to do is we are going to polish. So the polishing stages after grinding do not create the incredible dust that we experience when we are shaping our stones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you a few different ways that you can polish. And the first way I'm going to talk about is making your own wooden polishing bits for your Dremel. So what we start with is a dowel. Okay, and you can see that this dowel is about 1/2 inch across, and then it's been cut into 1.5 inch sections, just like this. Okay, and you're going to notice that I drilled a little hole there, and that's going to be important in just a minute. Or sorry, I marked a hole where I'm going to drill. So what we are going to create is this. Okay, now it takes about 2 minutes to make. It's not hard. Maybe up to 5 minutes to make each one. And you want one of these for each step that you're going to go through. Now, when you're grinding and shaping your stone, you're probably using about 120 grit diamond bits. So the next step you want to do is going to be 220 or around there, which you're just going to need the grit itself, which I'll show you here. This is 220 grit. Okay. So that'll be the first step. But first I'm going to show you how to make these. Okay. So you go to Rio Grande and you order this part. In the description of the video, if you click on the title, it will give you a drop-down menu explaining what the video is about, and then there's links. So these are the parts you need. It comes with 6. I think it was maybe less than $5 for all of these mandrels. Okay. And what they look like is a screw. It's not technically a screw because it doesn't wind down to the point. These are actually just individual circles. You can see that there. Okay, so you're going to need to drill into the center of it. This one is a little bit too small, so I'm going to go ahead and use this drill bit in my Dremel Micro, which is generally what I use for anything past grinding and shaping my stones. So it just goes in, and I am using the collet that's like a drill bit, so it holds all different sizes, but because this is so small, I do need to crank it on with my screw thingy. What is it called? So then we want to see how deep of a hole we need to make. So it needs to go to right about there. A little bit deeper is okay. So then we just turn this on. Okay. I like this because you can hold it like a pencil. Okay, and I use my pinky finger to brace, and then I'm just going to go straight in. Okay, that's deep enough. Okay, now you can see the hole. It's a little off center. And that's okay because the next step is the shaping step after we connect the two pieces together. So I'm going to make 4. So I'm going to do 4 really quick right here for you. Ooh. Be careful. Now you want to make sure you're using a hard wood for this. My husband has access because he works at a cabinet shop. But these are just dowels from Walmart, so most likely pine. And pine is a pretty soft wood, but that's what we have to work with, so we're going to be okay with that. Okay, that's great. Next step, you want to take Elmer's wood glue. I can never get the top off of this. Oh, yeah. You're going to need a wrench, and that's just for tightening. There we go. Now we got it open. Okay, so the wrench is going to be for tightening the mandrels into the wood. See how it goes in nice? And then we're going to crank it down. Okay, but first we're going to put a drop of wood glue right into there. And don't worry, whatever is excess can just be wiped off with a towel, paper towel. Okay, you just want to make sure that that is good. And then you take your wrench, whoop, dripping everywhere. If you catch it quick enough, it does come out of fabric. Okay, and then you're just going to twist it down into the wood base until you can't twist it anymore and it's secure. And you just wipe off the excess on the outside and let it dry. Okay, I usually do these at night. That way in the morning when I wake up, good to go. So we're just going to do the next 3, same fashion. Try to get a little less glue on there so I have less mess. Okay, so see the glue in there. And then I'm going to stick it in a couple times. Make sure that that's in nice. Okay, grab my pliers and then just twist in till it's seated all the way in. Okay. And wipe off the excess glue. Now, if it's uneven or to the side, you don't need to worry about that at all because the shaping step will take care of that. You do not want anything larger than 1.5 inches. That is the most that your Dremels can handle. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. Now for me, I prefer using a bullet shape, which is easier for polishing all the way around, especially round things. But one other thing you can do is you can leave it like that and glue on wet sandpaper grit. So you could do that as well. Okay, we have one left to finish. And we're done with the glue. Yeah, I'm making a mess all over myself. That's okay. So then I'm just going to take this and stick it right in, get that glue all around the screw. Okay. Use my pliers or whatever they're called. Sorry if I'm using the wrong terminology. I'm not trying to. And then you just screw it right in nice and tight. Okay. Now I made one last night so I can show you the next steps that we do. Okay. Now I have one that I did last night that's dry. Okay. You can see it's off center a little bit, and that's fine. We're going to work with that. We're going to work through that. If you have comments to share, I can see them, so feel free to share any questions you may have. I'm just going to take the drill bit right out of here. Okay, pops right out. Pop this guy in. I always leave a little space when I put my mandrels in. Okay, tighten it down. And then we're going to start with, see if I can get the camera closer. We're going to start with a 40 grit. Okay, this is a 40 grit sandpaper. And we're going to go ahead and shape it into the bullet shape. So I'm going to turn it on. And then I'm going to turn it way down, all the way down. Okay, and you can see that it is not straight and that the ends look wider like a flange. But don't worry, because you can fan that all off and even it out because of the motion of it going around and around. It will naturally carve into the correct shape. So that's not anything to be concerned about. Okay. Oh, I'll have to turn it up a little bit. I just use the back and forth motion. Okay. And this will take care of a lot of the wobble. I try to work off the table. I'm not really applying hardly any pressure. I'm using my forefinger. I'm holding it like this, and I'm using my forefinger to just hold it in place. Okay, so as you can see, it ground down more on this side than this side, but now it is all equaled out, okay? So when it spins, it's not wonky. If you have wonky bits, whether you're using the leather pad polishing technique that I've taught in past videos or this one, you want to make sure that there's no wobble to your bit, okay? Now we did the initial shaping on a 40, and I'm not worried about this dust because it just goes right in the trash. And I have a shop vac, okay? So that was using a 40 grit, okay? Now we're going to use 110 grit, or 100 grit, whatever it is, okay? And we're going to use the same technique off the table because the Dremel actually is wider than up here, and when you're doing this, you can't hardly get into the right angle. So off the table works best, at least for me. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to turn it down to 10, okay? And then I'm just going to go back and forth across the whole thing. Okay, all the way up to a nice point. Now you can see that it has evened out. I make sure I do the edges here because I will be using this for polishing. Now, so after 100, we want to use a 200, and we want this sucker to be very smooth. We don't want it to have bumps or spots where the grit's going to hang on in one spot only and not the rest. Grit can be kind of expensive, so just my brain's always thinking of the best, easiest way to do things. That's the cheapest. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to turn it down to 10. Okay. Okay, so now you can see we have a nice bit for polishing. It is very smooth. There's a little bit down here that I didn't worry about because I don't really work that close to the mandrel. Okay, see how fast that went? Now you can use this to polish rocks. You can use it to work silver, polish silver. I like the pointy end because then I can get into cracks and crevices pretty easily. But there's all kinds of shapes. Any shape that a drill bit comes in, you can make the same shape. Okay, if you wanted a ball on the top, you would just use a cup diamond, and then you would shape it around just the way I showed you how to make the bullet point. Okay, now I'm going to get this off my table. One, two, three. Let's see, where's my other ones? I had 4, so I'm not really sure what happened to the other one. Oh, duh, it's still in here. Okay, so I'm going to just take this out real quick. The steps to polishing after you get through 100, 120, you're going to start going up by double. So the next step will be 240 or so. And then for me, I like to use canned air just to get the dust off. Okay, now we're starting, oh, and me. Careful you don't freeze yourself when you're doing that. Okay, now we're going to go back over here. And because I don't need my big box for this, we're not creating dust, we are going to be working wet. So I have a dollar store bowl for flowers, and inside there you can see I have a couple towels, and this one is pretty dirty from being used before. So I'll just take this one out, fold it in half, and just set it right back in there. This can be used for all the steps of your polishing, and you don't want your polishing grits to be contaminated by any other lower grit. So if you're using 220 pre-polish, like I have right here, you want to be mindful that this does not end up in any of your other containers, okay? It's very, very important, because even a little piece of grit getting into what you're working on can cause some pretty dramatic scratches, especially if it's a lower grit. So be mindful of that always. And then I also have a spray bottle. So as I'm working, I'm going to open that up a little so it sprays nice and wide. So as I'm working, I can keep my stone wet. Okay. So I will be using 220 grit here. This will be the first. Okay, so I'm just going to place him in here. He won't stay in there, but I'm going to get him nice and wet all over. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a slurry. Okay, a slurry with that grit. Now, this is bone dry. So what I want to do is I just want to oil this up a little bit, because that's going to allow that grit to stick to it. And I'm going to use a mineral oil. I just have to figure out where I put it. No worries. Okay, so you can see that it's got oil now on it. Okay, and that's going to allow this grit to stick to it. Once I use this with 220 grit, I cannot use this with anything else, and it needs to be kept separate. It needs to be marked. So what I will do later after the show's over is I will paint the top part of this mandrel with some, I get very shaky. I will paint the top part of the mandrel. I will use acetone to clean the oil off, and then I will paint it with nail polish, and that nail polish color will correlate for this grit. Okay. So then all I have to do is take my grit, roll this around in here. You'll be able to see where the oil didn't touch it, it didn't grip. Okay. This is just a 1960s bottle that was labeled grind, and I thought that's perfect. Okay. So we might want to leave that out because we might need more. Okay. And if we need more, what we're going to do is we're going to get some oil, rub it on there a little bit, okay, and then stick it back in the grit. So for this, I'm going to be starting with using this till it runs out of power and it has to be recharged. It usually lasts me about 30 minutes, maybe a little longer, depending on exactly what I am doing. Now remember to always leave that sticking out just a little bit. Okay, and then just go ahead and crank it on, okay, nice and tight. So when you turn this on, it is going to fling grit everywhere, okay? That's just naturally what happens when circular motion happens. Everything pulls away from it. So this machine, this Dremel Micro, always turns on to high speed, and I'll have to bring it down, okay? But just bear with me a second. I'm going to point this down in here, and then I'm going to turn it on. See all the grit that just came off? And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it down to 5 just to get started, okay? Now what you're trying to create while you're doing this is a dirty slurry right on the stone itself. So I'm going to need to turn this up, and as you're starting out, when you're using brand new wood, you have to constantly be adding the grit until it's actually right into the wood itself. It's just impregnating itself. I could spray this with water. That might help hold it on a little bit better. You could also make a slurry with water and your grit itself with a little bit of mineral oil, and then stick it down in, and then when you come out, you'll already have a little bit of slurry built up. Now, we want to remember to keep our stone wet. And the great thing about this is you can actually see where you've worked, okay? I'm turning it down to 10, and I'm just going to go over and over until I can see that all the scratch marks left over from 120 diamond grit is gone, okay? It doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of time, and you can see how I'm using the whole part of the wood, okay? And then now, as I get it wet again, just ever so lightly, okay? It's just going to keep creating that nice slurry that I can use all over the entire skull, okay? I like using the wooden bits for things such as fire agate or opal. You can really see it working really good here, getting into all the nooks and crannies, okay? You just go over it and over it until all those previous scratch marks from the diamond are gone, just as you would do with any other bit, okay? And as it dries out, you can see that slurry is dried up on there. And then once I get it wet, I'll be able to work with it again. So you can see in here all this extra grit, okay? I can just take that and rub it right on, just like that. And you know, it's you can see how dirty the end of this is starting to get. As that grit works into the wood, it will get blacker and blacker and blacker until it fully has the amount of grit in there that it'll take, okay? This is just time-consuming, slow work, but doing it this way is so much faster than doing it by hand, which you can totally do fluorite or calcite by hand with just some sandpaper, okay? You see all the scratches are disappearing. It's really getting in there, making a nice slurry. Now this is going to be a long video, so feel free to come back and watch it later. Watch it at double speed. Oh, thank you for the greetings from Florida. I needed that today. You are such a sweetheart. Okay, you can see as I just continue to work around and around, I'm not really hardly applying any pressure more than what you would for a pen or a pencil. Okay, and it's just taking all those scratches right out. Okay, so if you want, you could even stick your finger down in the grit and rub it onto the stone itself. Or you can do how I'm doing. I'm just picking it up off the clean rag. Okay. You don't have to use oil on your mandrel if you don't want to, but it does help for the grit adhesion to happen. Okay. So in between each step, what you need to do is you need to take it and wash very well your work area, because you do not want this lower grit contaminating your higher grit. So what I will do is I will switch out what I have in the bowl, the different fabrics, and I will be very mindful of where I put those things so they can be used, dried out and used again for that grit. Okay, we want to recycle. We don't want to use very much water. Okay, now you can see that the wood is starting to show the color of the wood. Okay, but you can see that the grit is starting to build up in there. I'm just going to go ahead and dip a little bit more in. Spray my skull. Turn this on. Turn it down. I'm on 10 right now, which is pretty slow. But until I get the grit built up in each of these wooden polishing mandrels, I just want to go nice and slow. You could use a drip for this if you have one that hangs up high. That would be really nice. I don't personally have one of those right now because I made my drip just for my box. As we're going, just so you know, I can see the comments. So if you have questions, let me know. Now, you can use back and forth motions, circular motions. At this point, you need to be aware that the grit itself is going to get stuck in any cracks or crevices inside the stone. And because of that, when you wash it out, you need to be very mindful of those places and work very hard with either a toothbrush or a vibratory water thing. I forget what they're called, sorry. So just get it wet periodically. Come in, you're making a nice slurry. This is not taking any material away from the stone itself. It is just polishing around where the scratches of the previous step were. Okay. So once the motor on my micro Dremel runs out, I will go ahead and I will put it on the charger and use an even smaller Dremel that is a lot more lightweight, but it is plugged in directly to electricity. Just another good reason not to drop it into water. You need to be very cognizant of that, especially if you're working with a Dremel that doesn't have the flex shaft on it. Now I can see there is going to be a lot of sections where I didn't go back and smooth this over too very good with the 120 diamond. But as soon as I finish getting this one through this step, I'll show you a few different ways you can polish with other tools available to you through a couple different spots. Now, this is why I like the bullet point, because it actually can get into these tight little spots, and I can just work it around and around. And I can see right here, there's a bunch of spots that I left from the previous step. I'm just going to get this a little wet. And I'm going to get a little bit more grit. See all that? I haven't even used this part of. See how I'm just applying that there with the wet water? And I'm going to turn this on. Turn it down. And then come back into these areas where I applied the grit. You want to make sure that you wash your hands really, really well, or change gloves if you're using gloves. Okay. And like I said before, this is going to be a long video, so if you don't stick with me through the whole thing, I totally understand. Come back, watch it at double speed. So you're going to use more water and more grit on the early stages of polishing, as though when you go up in the steps, it takes a lot less time. Okay, you're going to see that today, how quickly we get through each independent step and how quickly different steps go. And you can start to see that if you're working with the fluorite, it will start to appear glossy and clear as long as the piece that you're working is glossy and clear. Okay. So it's also a good idea once you get done to just give it a good spray off and wipe down with a towel and look really closely. Now this applies to carving or making cabochons. You want to look really closely and make sure that you got all those scratches from the previous step out before you move on and up in grit. Like I said, this is the part that takes the longest because it is more close to. I'm just going to go ahead and just sprinkle a little bit into this water here. It is going to take the longest, and that's okay. I'll spray that down, get a little wet. Turn this down. And I'm just trying to get that up into the wood itself. And this is going to require a little bit more water to make a nice slurry, but you can see that slurry coming on now, how it's turning from black to kind of a gray color, and that's what we want to see. I also have a drink sitting out next to me, and I keep it covered because you do not want to inhale or drink any of the grit that could be coming off your stone when you're working. You also want to be careful if you have dogs or kids that you are doing everything you can to protect them from any of the dust or any of the stuff that could possibly come off of the stones you're working. If you're concerned, you can wear an N95 mask or even just a bandana over your face to keep the particles out. You don't need to wear a full respirator at this point, but if you choose to do so, you totally can. So you can see that the underside of the skull, it was in really rough shape. But how quickly I've been able to come in and get most all of the scratches out. So while I'm doing this, guys, where are you guys all from? I see that Dawn is from Florida. So when you're working with fluorite, this is going to go a lot faster than if you were working with agate, fire agate, or anything harder than fluorite. So fluorite is about a 4.5 to a 5, depending on what you're working with. Kind of like opal. Kansas. Alright, I'm going to just stop for a minute because my hands are getting tired. And I'm just going to look real closely. It looks like I still need to do the chin, the teeth, under the nose. For the most part, I've got the scratches out. There's some work that still needs to be done here, but it already looks so much better. Okay, so I'm just going to get this step finished. Once I get through this step, I'm going to show you different tools you can use for polishing. And the higher you go up in grit, the more speed and heat that you can use, unless you are polishing opal. Then you need to stay at a slow speed and take lots of breaks because opal is very temperamental to heat. And you need to know that sometimes fluorite won't take a super great polish. It really depends on the quality of the rough that you're using. If when you purchase your rough, it looks like glass, that is what you want. Okay, see, in each of the teeth, we are seeing the grit just getting right in there, just as if it were a crack. Okay. And each step you're going to go through, it's going to get clearer and clearer, like ice. Yeah, and that's what you want. feel like I'm brushing my kids' teeth here. Hold still. See, and I'm not going to worry about going into the details of the teeth. I'm just getting the outside. And it is not changing the shape of my carving at all because it's such a high grit that all it's doing is pre-polishing. And I'm just going to go in between a little bit on the bottom with the highly detailed section here. I need a little bit of water. And you can see how the grit is embedded now into the wood and making its own slurry. And that's exactly what we want. Now for anyone working on larger stones, one of the things that you can use is a concrete polisher. Those are about $300. I use that when I make bowls. That's one of my favorite things to make besides teaching and carving. The last bowl I made was a dinosaur bone bowl. That turned out really well. Okay, so once I got all of the little details here done around the eyes, the teeth, the jaw, the chin, I'm going to turn speed up and I'm going to go around the outside, the big sections here, and I'm really going to grind it down and smooth it out, okay? No masker box needed, not when you are at this point because you are not creating a lot of dust and junk. You are always welcome to do it that way, but it's not necessary. Okay, now I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to leave it at that high speed. And I am just going to go all over the entire thing. The higher the speed, the more water you're going to need. I may have to stop and add water here and there. So your guys' comments will not show up when the video is uploaded after the live ends. So if I'm repeating your questions out loud, that's for everybody watching on the replay. And also so I can make sure I understand your questions. And see how much faster this is going. And as it dries out, it is showing me all the different stretch marks. Okay. So you can see it hasn't smoothed it out completely, but that is my fault for not really going over the first step the way I probably should have. Okay, so just remember to take your time at the first 3 steps at least. And the last steps you can rush through pretty quickly. I'm just going over this till it dries, because then I can see where exactly I need to work on if I choose to. And because this is just a demo, I'm not going to go ahead and make sure it's perfect. But for those of you participating, just remember that spending as much of your time on each of the earlier steps, the better your project's going to turn out. Okay? Well, it doesn't matter what you're working on. Oh, my hand is locking up. It's being really weird. I'm going to go over the face again. The teeth are going to be really weird. That's okay. I'm hoping you can't hear me breathing really heavy into the phone mic because I'm working directly behind, my face is directly behind the camera here. And I don't care if the inside of the eyes is completely polished. You'll notice on a lot of the Chinese mass manufactured skulls that they don't polish the inside of the eyes or the teeth. So if you want to do that, that's great, but it's not necessary. Alright, I'm going to call this good enough because we have a lot of steps still to get through. Just know that the higher polish you get, the glassier and glossier your project's going to be. And then if you use the wide part of the wood, that is great for covering large areas. And your tools will overheat if you are pressing too hard. Okay, so keep that in mind. You don't want your tools to overheat. That wears out the brushes. Also, applying too much pressure will also do the same. Alright. Now, I could work on this for hours and hours because it's very soothing to me. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off now. Like I said, when I was finished with this, I'm going to go ahead and put it back on the charger. Okay, I'm taking this out. I'm going to set this aside where it's not going to get touched by anything. So no cross-contamination. You can also use a Sharpie to write on the stone, okay, or sorry, the mandrel, what it is that what grit that one is, okay. I am wiping down the tools that I used, okay. I'm wiping down my tool itself. A little bit of water on the tool. That's not going to hurt anything because it's getting wiped right off. Okay, no grit contamination here, guys. Setting that on the charger. I'm putting my 220 grit over here to the side. I'm going to spray this off really, really well. Then when I'm going to walk away from the camera for a minute or two, and I'm going to go inside to my kitchen sink. Okay, and I'm going to scrub it with a toothbrush. So there is a fracture line here, and then inside the teeth is where the grit has decided to go, and up the nose and in the eye holes. Okay, I'm going to take this, set this aside. I'm going to take this out, okay, full of water. I can wring this dry, hang it up, and use it next time I use 220 grit. Now you can have a different bowl and a different towel inside each for each of your steps. I just don't have that available to me, so I'm just going to wipe this out. Okay, you can take it inside. I'm just going to go dump the water out, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I went and scrubbed out my bowl, fresh as a daisy. And then I'm going to place this washcloth in here. Okay. And then I scrubbed this with a toothbrush. Got all the grit off. Now, as it dries, you're going to be able to see where you need to go back over. Oh, this is a dirty towel now. Okay. So we're going to dry it off really good. And then anywhere that's white, that will need to be gone over if you're doing it yourself. Okay. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to do that today. So you can see the back here is nice. See all of that. I could have taken that out if I'd have spent more time working with my 120 grit, the diamond blades, okay? So I was going to tell you, there are different tools you can get. Now, you can buy these mandrels from, I believe, Kingsley North. These are different polishing compound stickers, and you stick them right onto these rubber mandrels. Each color is a different grit, okay? And it comes in a bag like this, okay? These are made by High Tech Diamond, and each color corresponds to a different polishing compound. So you can see Purple is 220, brown is 325, red is 600, blue is 1200, orange is 3000. Now notice that these grits double. So as you're going up, you're doubling your grit. So if you're not using anything like this, you need to remember that when you're working, okay? So the next step I'm going to go through with a new drill bit is pre-polish, which is 600 grit. Okay, so we did 220, we're going all the way up to 600. Putting a little oil on my bit. Now, this grit, this is going to be a powder, so we need to be very careful that we do not breathe in the particulates. Okay, so make sure that you keep everything wet. If you have drinks or food, I suggest you move them out of your workspace. Now, this says polish. This is the same, but this is 600 aluminum. Okay, so I'm just going to go in there. I can make a paste, a water paste with this. Okay, that will also work really well. Looks like a powdered donut. And then I'm just going to sprinkle a little water on. Okay, and just rub it in. You don't want to use too much water at this point. Okay, I'm just rubbing the excess onto the skull itself, especially down on the teeth area, the nose, and the eyes. Okay, so it's really messy. And now I am going to use my plug-in Dremel. I'm going to tighten this down. Okay, so you can see the Dremel I'm using. Okay, it's called the Dremel 2050. The power button is here, and it's really nice. It's got a very good hand feel. You can get a lot of work done. And then at the bottom, you can control the speed. So when we start it, we don't want it to really be moving too much. We don't want that to flick around a lot. Okay, so I am just going to apply this like a paste everywhere, all over the entire stone, just really quick. Okay, it's okay if it dries on there, because once it gets wet again, it will make a nice slurry, and slurry is what we want when we're doing this. Okay, I'm not going to worry about the underside from this point out. I don't care if it's polished on the underside. That doesn't matter to me, really. Okay, so just going around the top, the sides, and the front. Then I'm going to go ahead and whip this up a little bit. Get this wet, that wet, and start polishing. And the higher the speed, or the higher the grit, the higher the speed you want to use. I'm going to go over this whole thing really slow. And then I'm going to go ahead and go over the whole thing really at a high speed. Believe it or not, some stones polish better with friction and heat. And the only stone I can think of that does not is opal. Okay? And you can use these wooden bits on opal. You just need to remember to keep your stone wet and speed high. Okay? Still going at the same speed. Just trying to work that polish in all the way around, because I am going to be coming back much higher. And you're going to see from here on out that this is going to go a lot faster than the last step that we did, because it's going to work faster for us. Yeah, I'm doing the underside of the chin because that kind of shows. But not super important because I didn't spend a lot of time working on it at the higher speed. Okay, what I really like about this machine is that it doesn't just turn off, it slows down. Some Dremels turn off when you're working. That just frustrates the heck out of me. I'm just in between the teeth. And around. Okay. Remember, you can always come back and watch this at double speed, so you're not having to sit for the entire duration of this process, because it is a long process. We have three more steps after this one. We'll do 14,000, and I think I have 50,000. If not, it's a higher grit than that. And then Zam. We use Zam as the final polish. At least we do in this house. You can use ceram oxide, you can use Zam. Either way, you will get a nice, beautiful shine. Okay, so the whole thing has been coated. I'm just going to let it sit for a minute. Okay, and you can see my hands are a little coated too, so I can just spray that off. Okay, I'm going to get a paper towel and dry my hands off. Mike, you're hilarious. Yeah, okay. Pliers. Those are pliers, not a wrench. I'm really bad with the names of different tools. I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break, and I'll be back. So hang tight. Is this a pliers or wrench? Mike, are you still here? I'll be back, guys, in like 2 minutes. I just need to get up and walk around. You know I have a bad back. And then we'll finish this up. The next 3 steps we'll go through within the next hour. All right, guys, I'm back. What I have done is, like I was saying, you could mix it with water and make a little bit of a slurry, and then you can dip your wood into that, which is what I'm going to do. Okay, so you can see here, I'm just going to rub this around in here. Okay, but remember we already have grit, this pre-polish on here, which is a 600. And we're just going to spray it with a little water. And remember, we're going to work at a higher speed. Oh, it's not. Okay, here we go. On button, I'm going to go up to 3. And remember, if you did not work hard to get those earlier scratches out, the more polishing that you do, the more all of those scratches are going to show. Okay? Yes, you can wear a mask. As there is particulates entering the air if you're not working wet. So just stop every once in a while and get your project wet. You can hear the different tones of the machine because I am applying pressure now. Once you get up to this grit, that's when you apply a little bit more pressure, speed. Friends, at this point, I am working in a circular motion. I'm not sure if that you can see that. As I'm going around and around and around. Some spots you can't do that, but that's okay because the machine itself is spinning. Kind of feel like a dentist at this point. Now we're drying out. Drying out a little bit. A little bit of water. You don't need much. The higher the grit, the more careful you need to be about cleaning each individual crack and crevice out, because it's finer, and so it's going to be harder to get in and out of those areas that are finely detailed. And you can see that the shape that I'm using is really helpful for a lot of this here. And the harder the wood for your bit, the better. Okay? So that is definitely something to consider if you're making these. Okay, a little water. If you're using oil, you need to remember that some stones don't like oil, okay? Like opal. You want to always use water when working with opal. You don't want to introduce any oil into an opal stone because it can and will discolor your stone. Fluorite actually will make it look dull versus giving it a very high polish shine. And calcite, if you're working calcite and doing this, the calcite will absorb the oil into the stone because that's the nature of the stone. not going for perfection. I'm just trying to show you guys how I do it. So from here, we're going to move on to 14,000. And you do not have to go all these different levels. If you do a really, really good job at the first couple levels, you should be able to notice a pretty decent polish once you get to about 600. And you'll notice that I'm only going over each area twice. And if I was doing this for myself, I would go over each area until each area was perfect. Okay? Now, if you have a fracture on your stone, you want to make sure you're not pushing. You want to make sure you're not pushing on those fractures because it will cause it to break off. And once you get to this point, if that happens, it's kind of heartbreaking. So now I'm going to turn this up to 3. And I'm going to just go over this really fast, over the whole thing until it dries. Just to make this go by a little bit faster for the video. Remember, if you're doing this, you want to spend as long as it takes on each step to get. Sorry, I had a fly land on me. They are really bad up here this year. I have my back door open. Stopping and looking in between each step, drying off your stone. That's going to be the best way you can see to get rid of all the previous scratches. Okay? And you can see when the powder dries, it has gone into every scratch, every nook and cranny. Now, that just came loose, which is fine because I'm going to consider this step done. We'll move on to the next step. And I'm going to take this and this and put it aside. Okay. I'm going to come in here, just give it a nice little wipe down. Okay. use my hand. And I'm going to go inside and use a toothbrush really quick to get all the grit out of these hard to reach places in between the teeth and up the nose and in the eye hole. Okay. I'm not concerned about the grit so much as I could be. Okay. I'm going to run inside. I'm going to take this out. Use the back side, wipe it down. Okay, next step is 14,000. And that will be applied a little bit differently because it comes in a grease tube. Okay, I'm going to run and wash this off really quick and wash my hands. And I'm going to get this nice and soaked. It does help the grit stick in there a little bit better when it flies off. Okay, I'll be right back. 1 second. Okay, so when you're washing your tools out, you want to also make sure that you are washing your hands. Okay, now we can see as it dries, it's going to be a little bit shinier. I'll just sit him in there. We'll get a new, where did I, oh, they're right here. Get a new mandrel. And this one, we are going to be using 14,000 grit. This is High Tech. That's the brand. And it is a polish compound in an oil form. So if it's really hot, it's going to spray everywhere. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to massage it into this wood, and I will put it on top of my stone. So let that sit for a second here. And just like the previous steps, I'm just going to work it in around the stone. All this stuff that would come flying off. Do you see that is oil and grit there? Okay. It's fine. It's not going to dry because it's an oil base. The water itself will dry. You can really see the shape. Okay, and again, I'm not worrying about the bottom. I'm just doing the tops and sides. Okay. So then this just goes in here. Hold the lock down and tighten this. You can see that this one is a little wonky, and that's okay. And it's tight. Okay. So then we are going to slow this down to 1 because the stuff's going to go flying. Hold it in the ball. Okay, now it's on. I'm going to turn it up to 3. And I'm going to work very quickly, and I'm going to apply pressure. So what do I use to clean my rocks in between? I use Dawn dish soap because it takes the grease and oils away, and a used toothbrush that is only for rocks. The process is much faster once you get up to the higher grits. And that came loose, which happens, especially when you're working at a high speed and applying pressure. So I'm just going to lock that in, tighten it back in again, hopefully remember where I stopped. Cannot do it backwards, guys. Sorry. Okay, get back. And it's loose again. So, before I ruin it, I gotta tighten it back down. That is because I did not make sure that this one was super duper balanced. So you can hear it just wobbling. Oop, wobbling. So now you know what happens if you don't get your bit perfect. Okay. So one thing I can do is I can turn the speed down low, and it should not be so loose. I'm just going to keep pushing through. Now everything gets oily at this point, so you have to be very careful that your stone that you're working on or your tool, you don't want them to get out of your hand. And you can see at this point that the oil isn't letting it get dry. Okay, you're going to need to wash your rock really good with a degreaser such as Dawn, and that will help get rid of any trace amount of grit left behind. And as soon as this live is over, this will be available as soon as it uploads to Facebook. I keep seeing my fingerprints here, thinking those are scratches, but it's just the fingerprints from the grit. You can wear gloves at this point, at any point actually, if you are afraid of getting a little grit on your hands. I know a lot of people that wear knife file gloves while they're polishing or carving. It's all personal preference, but it's not a necessity. So I'm not really focusing too much inside the eyes, because like I said, I don't really care if the inside of the eye is polished up as much as I do the outer features. Okay. And I'm really starting to see all the scratches left behind from previous steps. So I can tell what I did wrong with this bit is the top is balanced. That's why I'm not having any problems. And when I go to use the side, you hear that wobble? Yeah, you don't want that. And it's the easy fix. You just put it on the sandpaper and smooth it back out. And then reload it with your grit. Just remember to keep them all separated so they don't cross-contaminate each other. Now you can see I'm just doing back and forth. And I'm starting to see rainbows inside from the fracturing lines. That's kind of cool. And the more you polish it, the more you bring it to a high polish, the easier it is to see internal fractures and rainbows. And I used to tell my kids if they seen a rainbow in a rock, it was a trapped fairy. And that fairy would answer their wishes. I don't know. It was just a sweet thing to do with my stepkids. Alright. I think we went over this pretty well. Good enough for this step. I can't think of any spots I missed. Anywhere that you want to spend extra time, just do it. So as far as the contest goes, we have until September 20th to turn in your before and after photos to my email, which is in the description of the video. Okay. So it is not too late at all to participate. All right, we're going to call this good. Turn this off. Okay. And then I'm going to take this guy out. And my hands are pretty greasy because this is greasy work. Now we're going to do 200,000 grit next. Okay. So I'm just going to put my tool or my grit with my individual tool that I'm using. I'm going to run in and wash this off really fast with Dawn dish soap. Okay. Dawn dish soap and an old toothbrush. And then I just take this one out. I'll wipe out the entirety of the bowl with the back side. And then put this one in for the next round. I like to get the bottom nice and wet. Just helps things go along. Okay. And we'll use this one with 200,000. Okay. Give me 2 minutes and I will be right back. Okay, hi. Hi, Virgil, question mark. I'm guessing you were wondering where we are. We are on the second to the last stage of polishing. So now we have this all the way up through 200,000. You do not have to go this high. You could just go to 3,000 and call it good. So this is also a grease So you're just going to get it into your wood and you want to rub it in. Okay. And then the last step after this one is going to be ZAM. Okay, so in the earlier part of the video, which I recommend just waiting until it's all uploaded and watch it double speed, and then fast forward through the working process. Okay, so this is a grease. It's going to go on to the stone just like before. I'm just going to rub it around on top. And if you missed that, we talked about making sure that you don't mix your grits and that you spend a lot of time working at the lower grits. Okay, so it's in, it's tight. I'm going to turn it on to 3 and I'm just going to put a little bit of water on there. And you work in circular motion. The first part of the video, I showed how to make the wooden bits that I am using right here. And that sound is because it came loose. I am using the Dremel 2050, which is what I use for polishing because it never runs out of power because it's electric. Throw more water on there. So you want to take your time and go slow. And when you get to the upper grits, you want to be applying pressure because friction actually helps the process. Whereas when you're working with diamonds, you want to let the diamond do the work. Okay. So I'm just going to go over this relatively quickly. These higher grits don't make a slurry, and it just kind of disappears as you go along. If you do have questions or comments, I can read them, but just know that when the video goes live, they won't be available. That is why if you have questions, I'm repeating them out loud for anyone catching the video after it's been uploaded. And I am not doing the underside, so I'm going to do the underside of the chin. And I am just going around the whole thing. And then I'll do the face last. You guys can really see how much quicker the polishing goes once you get through the first 3 steps. Okay? And as long as you spend your time, it'll get nice and shiny, nice and glass-like. Okay? And that is what you're going for. As far as the contest goes, if you're a beginner versus an intermediate versus an expert, you will be judged accordingly. That way, it's kind of more fair for everybody. Okay. As long as you're starting with good rough, you shouldn't have any problems bringing it to a nice high shine. As long as you spend a lot of time at the earlier stages, which we didn't do because we're just trying to get through showing you how to do it. So if you do get all the way to the polishing, and you notice that you have a lot of scratches, you're going to have to just go suck it up and go all the way back. Okay? And if you're a beginner and you show me something that looks like this, I will be jumping for joy for you. Okay? And it is not about how it looks. It is about, did you have fun? Did you learn? Do you know what to do next time? Okay? So I went around the whole thing. And then, just like that, I'm going to take it in. I'm going to take this one off. Okay, so just push that black thing. And release this from the bit. Okay, so this is going to go with this. Okay, so they don't get mixed up. I'm going to go wash this really fast and I'll be right back. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is decontaminate your space. And just fold that all in on itself and give it a good wipe out. And put this towel to the side. Put a new washcloth in there. You can tell these are heavily used. And put a little water in the base. All right, so the next step we're going to do is called ZAM. And for this, I use a felt tip. See, it's turned black because this was used on silver. And it is a silver polish and it does react to silver. This mandrel's just a little big. That's why I like using these guys. Oh. And I'm having technical difficulties with this. So I am going to switch back over to this guy. He's been charging for a while. The mandrel is thick, so having a hard time getting it in. I don't know. This might not work. I might have to switch and get my big tool out. But let's see here. As long as it holds on tight, it should be okay. Okay, so then you just take your jam and you're going to load it while you're spinning. You want to get this all covered nice and green. Okay. This is a wax, it's a silver polish, and it polishes rocks just fine. You just want to be aware that it will get stuck inside any cracks or crevices. Okay. So I'm just going pretty quickly here because we're going to get this video finished for you guys. Now we went through all the steps for you. And this one you want to apply pressure. You want high speed. Okay, unless you're polishing on an opal. Okay. If you're polishing on an opal, you always want to go slower. And you want to use a lot of water and take a lot of breaks. So you can see that this black is kind of going around and staining the rock. But when I wash it with the toothbrush and the Dawn soap, it'll come off. I am just a hobbyist, guys. I don't do this professionally. I don't make stuff too often and sell it. But I am hyper-focused on it, so I have learned from some of the best there are on the different tricks and tips for getting a nice, good, smooth polish. Okay. So I'm just going around the whole thing once, just like all the other steps. Just getting that coated on there nicely. Okay. And then I'm going to move into the chin. Once I get it coated nice and evenly, which I almost have done, I am going to crank the speed up as high as it will go. And then I'm going to go over the whole thing. Now, when you're working with felt and mandrels that are screw in, you see how much it has shrunk since I started using it. And that is because it is compressing and or wearing away. And I have used this one a lot for my silver smithing. Okay, looks like I have a nice good coat on just about everything. You can see that it kind of dries on there a little hard. Now, I'm going to get a clean felt. And I'm going to polish this all right in. Okay, so we're done with this guy. I'm going to take him off. I'm going to get a clean felt out. Okay. Put that with my ZAM. You can use all kinds of different shapes, okay? Now this one is a big fat one, okay? So I'm just gonna put it right on here and screw it right into the center, which isn't marked too clearly. And I'm gonna put it on as tight as I can. And then if I push right there, I cannot feel the screw coming out. However, any amount of compression right there on the screw will cause it to come through and scratch your project, okay? So you just want it on nice and tight. Get your mandrel on there nice and tight, and we are going to turn this bad boy on high. Like that. And we are just going to go dry. It is going to make a mess. There is going to be fluff everywhere, okay? And we turn it on high because we want heat, we want friction. That's going to go in there. And that is going to give you a nice high polish. And then anywhere that you left any amount of scratches behind from your previous steps are going to show, because that grit is going to go right in to every crook, every nook and cranny. Okay? Fracture lines, everything. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to get all the way to this step and then realize that you messed up, because it is going to show like a magnifying glass. I promise you that. And as you work, all these little felt fibers, they're going to fly everywhere. So if you want to wear a mask for this part so you're not inhaling any of the felt fibers, might be a good idea. Or a bandana. Anything that's going to stop that from floating in your mouth. You can feel the stone heating up as you work. If it's too hot, this is why you can't do it on opal. If it gets too hot, just go ahead and stop. So this is really going to show you all the spots that I did not do. And machine heats up. This one does and turns off. So sometimes you have to stop, take a break, let it cool off. Maybe don't apply so much pressure. This is probably my favorite step of all of them because it really brings it to a nice, as long as we did a good job on the earlier steps, it brings it to such a very nice high polish. Okay. And when this machine turns back on, it goes back down to 15%, where 15 is the speed. And I'm not going to worry about changing that up right yet. So I'm just going to get most of this off, and then I'll crank the speed up on high and go over it one final time. Okay. And this doesn't matter if you're carving or making cabochons. You don't want to skip this step. Okay. Now, I'm not going to be able to get inside those eyeballs, but I can get just outside. If I used a pointed felt, well, I didn't have any left, so I'm just using this one. Okay. And then just a once over. I hope you cannot hear that. Apparently someone's trying to call me. Sorry. Remember, you do not have to go through every single step I went through on this. Like the most steps you do go through. It's better it's been a lesson now. That's really good enough for the video. If you guys have any further questions, be sure to join my Facebook group on Lapidary by searching Lapidary Art. I also have a group where I sell stuff randomly. It's called Rockhounding Journal, Crystal Magic. If you look me up on Facebook, you can also find me there. However, at this time, I'm not accepting any friend requests. But you can always leave me a message, and it will go into my habit folder, and I do check out my message once a week. Like I said, the easiest place to get a hold of me is in some Lapidary group, and that is where this contest is coming from. So the more you work it, the more you go over these spots, just the more it's going to bring out the shine and luster of the stone. So remember, the more time you spend on each step, especially those early ones, the better the project is going to turn out. So I'm going to go take this, I'm going to scrub it down, and I just use water, dish soap, and toothbrush, and I will show you the final result. So I will be right back. Okay, sorry, I am back, and I hope that by showing you an imperfect project But it shows you that you can get started. You can have fun doing this. You don't have to worry about perfection. As long as you are enjoying what you do, to me, that is all that matters. Okay? So, let's see here. So you can see that the internal fractures and lines inside have been brought out. We did not polish this bottom part. You can see his teeth came out really nicely polished. His eyes, not so much, but you can see the white line running through it now, and then right here that you couldn't see before. And there is some slight banding around the back. It feels silky smooth. It's amazing. I really appreciate you guys. And with that being said, remember the keys. Take your time and have fun.